Hello and welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. It's great to be back here with you. I'm on location, as you can see. Some people say to me, I need to get out of the black box. Well, I am, and we're going to be doing that more and more. But I'm here, as always, to talk about mind-body issues. And what does that mean? Well, it means that when you are having anything that's going on in your mind, it can change what goes on in your body. Now, we know this just in terms of basic stuff. We know this in terms of you get embarrassed, you blush. But what people don't know is that if you're having thoughts of fear, if you think you're damaged, your body can respond that way. And so I had 8 years of chronic back pain myself. Obviously, that was horrific, but it was truly magnificent and pretty miraculous when I got relief. And how did that happen? I discovered a guy named Dr. John Sarno. Many of you guys know him or know of him. He was a great medical doctor, and he found that in treating his patients that their emotional lives correlated more with their pain. And from there, it all radiated out. What we've found since is that everything that goes on in your brain, your emotions and your thought process, can manifest in your body head to toe. What am I all about? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. Your job is to ask the questions. My job is to provide the answers. The reason for that is, as I tried to get better, I needed questions answered. If I didn't have the questions answered, I'd be lost. I didn't know how I was going to get better. Ultimately, we have to help you feel confident that you can get better. And the way to do that is to get answers to your questions. So the way that I do that is, and this is mostly for new people, but I have a system that I call the column system. What this is based on is the idea that there are 3 main reasons that people have symptoms. There's the emotions column, and the emotions column is when you have a symptom come in to distract you from a feeling you don't want to know about. There's also the doubt column. The doubt column is where your thinking creates whatever happens with symptoms, and that leads to a totally different kind of symptom. Emotions lead to the onsets and upticks in symptoms, those first moments. Doubt, the doubt column, can explain what happens when things stay. So with my back pain, the beginning was emotional. It truly was. I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't even know it was emotional, and I didn't even find that out for 8 years. But the perpetuation of those symptoms, that went on because of doubt. The third column is the power column. The power column is about your relationship with yourself, and that determines whether you get kind of stuck at a kind of low-level plateau in recovering. Once you get doubt down nice and low, once you can see how the emotions correlate with your symptoms, if you're just not fully getting better, something's hanging on, well, there's a different reason for that symptom. That symptom is trying to communicate with you. So I'll review this one last time, and then we'll jump in with questions. The emotions column is there to distract you. Emotions column, symptoms are there to distract you from whatever emotional experience you don't want to know about. That's the function of emotions column symptoms. The function of doubt column symptoms is to keep the function going. This is a psychological defense, and it wants you to be able to use that defense anytime it wants. So it keeps its function. It wants to keep you off balance. It's not thinking rationally. It can keep you in a situation where you're just not happy and not processing things and not understanding what's happening with your symptoms. But it thinks it's good because it's keeping its function. The power column, though, wants to tell you why the symptoms are here. There's a journey that you're having with yourself. So we're going to use this process today to talk about these 3 columns. When you ask me a question, I am going to answer these questions in terms of these 3 columns to show you how to think about things. Now, let me say hi to a couple of people because a lot of people have joined here, and I just want to make sure I greet them. Okay. Catherine Toomer, good to see you. Cindy Attias, good to see you. Scotty, How to Heal Chronic Pain is here. Rita's here with us. Scotty says hello. Good to see you. Murph Dana is here. Thanks for saying hi, Rita. JPlant65 is here, and we've got some questions coming in from Instagram. Field to Heal Wellness is here as well. Good to see you. And Field Louise has joined as well. Okay. Now, we have a bunch of questions coming in, but I actually did promise someone that I would do a preloaded question. I don't often get to those. Those are questions that people send to me in advance when they really need to know something, but they can't be here. So this is Caroline writing from Australia. Caroline says, I have been a migraine sufferer for over 40 plus years. The last 2 years, I've been working on mind-body things and I've gotten to a place of great improvement, but I still get migraines. I realized when you spoke about doubt, because she saw one of my videos, on one of your videos, and the 3 levels of doubt, I'll get to that in a second, that I've always thought I could only get a partial recovery and not ever completely be free of them, which I am now going to work on. So my question is, in the meantime, when I fill my prescriptions for triptans, which I assume is a painkiller, I actually don't know it by name, is this causing the doubt to linger? I feel I need the triptans for emergencies and when I know the pain gets out of control. It is still very much a crutch for me after 40 plus years of pain. Okay, thank you for this question, Caroline. Here's my answer. And whenever I answer a question, it's not just for the person who asked it. It's for all of you, because so many of you are either thinking these things directly or didn't realize that that was kind of percolating in the back of your mind. So the question essentially is taking pain-killing medication going to perpetuate the doubt and keep you stuck in the symptoms? So here's my rule of thumb. Whatever action you take, it should be an action to reduce doubt. So this is a little complicated, but it actually is also simple if you boil it down to that one sentence I just said. There are going to be times where taking the medication will actually reduce your doubt. And then there's going to be times where taking the medication will make your doubt go up. So you're going to have to gauge which is which. Here's my thinking on it. I don't want people to have to suffer. There's nothing inherently wrong with taking pain medication, and here's why. Mind-body symptoms are actually physical. Something real is going on in your body, and it hurts, and you may need some relief. Temporary relief is okay, but if you're going to do that, Caroline, I want you to simultaneously be fighting the doubt at the same time. If you take those pills thinking there's something physically wrong with me, I can't get better, I'll never be fine without these, doubt goes up when that happens. If, however, you're thinking, I'm going to take these to get myself some temporary relief while I hammer away at doubt, I'm confident I'll get this down, and I'm not going to need this in the future. That brings doubt down and makes your suffering less. So it's not inherently causing doubt. What causes doubt is what we do with our thought process. So another way of saying this, it doesn't matter what you do. It matters what you're thinking while you do it. So while you're taking these medications, I want you to be very thoughtful about what you're thinking and whether it adds to your doubt. Okay, I hope that was helpful. And send me an email because you're not on live, but if you do want to follow up on that, it's dan@crushingdoubt.org. The Charles Sanchez has joined us here. Good to see you here again, Charles. Always a pleasure. Okay, now we've got some other questions coming in from Instagram and YouTube. I'm going to get to an Instagram question now. Okay, Scotty Styles says, what do you think about insomnia from the 3-column perspective? Or thoughts about pain or symptoms coming back that are a part of the worrying thoughts when not being able to sleep? Let me just make sure there's nothing more in there, Scotty. Oh, insomnia feels like it would be difficult to somatic track, but I suppose the tracking that may work could be tracking thoughts from a place of safety to reduce doubt. Okay, I got to break that down into a couple things. So first things first, insomnia to me is a symptom like any other. Every symptom's the same. Now, symptoms that come on around sleep patterns can be different, especially when they involve sleeping. Like if you're having symptoms with night terrors or something, that's a little different because you can't be consciously engaged with it. Insomnia, though, you're still wide awake for it. So the way I think about it is, yeah, that's a columns related symptom. They all are, but I would say this is an emotions column related symptom primarily. What's usually happening when people have insomnia is there's something on their mind and their mind does not want to go to sleep because it wants you to figure it out. Now, let's keep in mind, emotions column symptoms are distractions from the feeling. It also doesn't want you to figure it out. But the way to think about the emotions column distraction is it only wants to distract you temporarily. Ultimately, it does want you to figure it out. It's just like, not right now, too painful, too dangerous. Well, what I do then is I treat it like any emotions column symptom. I think about what's the timing? Why is this happening now? What happened today? What's happening as I sit here? Invariably with insomnia, and I've tried this many times and I've had that symptom many times. When I try to go to sleep without doing that processing, I can't. I'm just not going to. So there are times where I say, okay, the action here that will help me is to go maybe do some work that is plaguing me and I can't rest while that's on my mind. or to sit back and think about the emotional states and think, what happened today? What was upsetting me? And that gives me a chance to conquer it. Now, let me jump back to Scotty's question because there were more parts to it. He said, what do you think about insomnia from the 3-column perspective? I've largely answered that, but I will say that it also can become a doubt symptom. When you've had insomnia one night, you can start to think, what if I have it the next night? Oh my God, what's going to happen? Then doubt can perpetuate that symptom. But notice, guys, it's exactly the same as any other symptom. Symptom onsets, emotions column. Symptom perpetuation, doubt column. Anything that where you need it to be communicated, ultimately, power column is trying to get you understanding of what's happening for you. So it's all the same. Now, the second part of Scotty's question was this. Or are thoughts about pain or symptoms coming back that are part of the worrying thoughts when not being able to sleep? So let me answer that part. That to me is doubt column related. And it's exactly what I just said in terms of like when you have that one time, it's usually the emotions column. When you keep having it or when you start anticipating it or you start worrying about it, that's the doubt column. So Scotty, you're doing it's actually very helpful the way you're laying this out to help people see how these things can apply from a columnist perspective. Okay, then he said insomnia feels like it would be difficult to somatic track. Okay, so let me address this about somatic tracking. Listen, I'm not an expert in somatic tracking, actually, in a way, although it is a big part of what I do in a sense. I just don't do it systematically where I think, okay, now I'm going to see how's my forehead doing? How's my shoulders doing? Somatic tracking, as I understand it, is where we check in with parts of the body. And by noting that, we connect to different emotional experiences. And sometimes it can really correlate very nicely in an emotions column sort of way. So it is a useful tool. But what I find about somatic tracking is that it kind of happens naturally when you're just thinking in the emotions column anyway. So I don't think it necessarily is difficult to track somatically if it's in that emotions column. If it's an onset or an uptick, it's suddenly there. I don't know somatic tracking as well again, but if you pay attention to parts of your body, there may be places in your body that are keeping you up. Like you might feel heavy in your chest, or you might feel symptoms behind your eyes, or you might have pain somewhere. So you can do that as a method to find out what's going on. But in many ways, it's the same thing as my emotions column. And you want to just find out what's happening here. What's causing these symptoms to be. Okay, now hold on. But I suppose the tracking that may work could be tracking thoughts from a place of safety to reduce doubt. That's the key. If it continues, it's doubt column. And you've got to start attacking the ideas, whatever you're saying to yourself about why it keeps happening. If you're saying, what if I'm stuck with this? What if I don't get better from this? What if I don't fall asleep? That gets you off course. Now, there's many ways to deal with that. You can counter it with ideas like, if I'm really, really tired, I'm going to fall asleep. Or you could counter it with the idea that, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy the bed. I'm not even going to bother trying to do anything else. I don't need to fall asleep. I just need to enjoy being here. So lots of ways to go about it. Scotty, it's a long and multifaceted answer, but that shows you what the columns can do. They give you 3 different ways to understand each and every symptom. Insomnia is no different. Okay, hope that helps. All right. A different Scott is here, stuck between stations. And Scott says more progress was made, a ton the last 3 weeks. That's good to hear with EMDR. And the deserving of punishment bad things idea. One of my 2 major doubts. The symptoms the last 10 days, hold on. Or in the last 3 weeks in general have been extreme. I'm sorry to hear that, Scott, but we'll get to why. With the fatigue, especially concrete legs, and facial head tingles sensations. Not sure if you have any advice. I do. I've always got advice, Scott, but let me just see if your next question relates to this. I'm going to read everything you wrote and then I'll back up if I need to. I think the struggle with the doubt of frustration regarding timing is really getting in the way, though I also have nothing else I can chalk these symptoms up to besides the trauma. Oh, I've got good things to say about this. Hold on a second. Really coming out in the physical form, besides the trauma, really coming out in the physical form, and that the brain nervous system has tried everything the last 7 months. So now it's going back to the original symptoms of extreme fatigue with There we go. With some head sensations thrown in to try and distract me with doubt since it senses the victories. Okay. There's so much in here. It's interesting. Every time you guys ask questions, there's so much in each, and I'm going to try to distill it to the most useful information possible. So the first thing is this. You were saying, this was kind of in the middle of what you were saying. You said, I think the struggle, I'm going to bring that up, with the doubt of frustration regarding timing is really getting in the way. Okay, so here's what I want to tell you. Timing is something that matters really mainly in the emotions column. It doesn't matter as much in the other columns. Here's why. The emotions column is about the onset and uptick in symptoms. It's all about the timing. It happens when it happens. If these aren't largely emotions column symptoms, you don't need to worry about timing. Doubt column symptoms are there all the time. They're just expansively there until your thinking changes. So you actually are primarily working in two different columns, and they're not even emotions column related. You're working in the doubt column, trying to get to a place where you can feel confident that you're going to get better. And you're working in the power column, as we've discussed in other episodes here. And that is around the idea of, can you heal things with yourself? Can you get to a good place with yourself and feel good? And so because these are more doubt column and power column symptoms, the timing of the symptoms doesn't matter, and it doesn't behave that way. Your job is going to be different than that. Don't worry about the timing. Focus on the overall process. Focus on, does this make sense? Can this make sense? Can I feel confident that I'm going to get better? Okay, that's the doubt column stuff. The power column stuff is, can I understand what the message is here? Remember, each column has a different function of symptoms. So in the power column, the function is communication. It's trying to tell you about you. So there's two things that are holding you back right now. And I don't even say I shouldn't say holding you back, because I actually think you're making fantastic progress. But there's two reasons it hasn't quite gotten fully better yet. One is your doubt's not quite low enough yet, and you've got questions about it. Great questions, by the way. The second reason is the power communication. Now, I believe you are getting major progress in that power communication in the EMDR sessions. And that's what's making symptoms go up. That's not atypical, by the way, guys. When you get in touch with power column symptoms, very typically, it takes a couple of weeks or even sometimes a couple of months. I hope that's not bad news for people, to be with that experience, because that's how it gets communicated. We can't just receive it in one day. We have to be in it. And so it's a time period that can be elevated symptoms. You're not stuck with that, though. You're actually metabolizing. It's like going through a mourning process, but this mourning process is happening to you physically. So that's one thing, Scott, is this is a physical mourning process. It's going to end as you go through it, but you've got to go through it. That's one thing. The second thing is the doubt. This doubt is coming in a great form, actually. It's coming in the best form of all, questions. Now, there are 4 forms of doubt. There is fear, there's confusion, there's just garden variety uncertainty, where you just don't quite know what's happening, even if you're not so confused. And then there's questions, where you are getting pretty close to understanding what's happening, but you still have more questions. Scott, you're mostly there. I think your fear is down quite a bit. I think your confusion is vastly lessened, but I think you don't have certainty yet. And your certainty is on the rise, but you have questions. So I always say, questions are the gold standard of the doubt column. That's exactly where you want to be. However, there's 2 types of questions. I call these A questions and B questions. Scott, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but A questions are questions that are designed to get you more information, to further your understanding of everything. B questions are asked out of fear. You're afraid, and it comes in the form of a question, and you say it. The good news is this: you're asking A questions. Your questions are designed to get you more information. You're doing the work. B questions, we think we're doing the work, but really we're just saying, well, this must be, we're almost actually trying to establish the fear as true. I don't hear that happening with you, Scott, so this is good. Now, let's get to that one last question you had, because that's where we get our answers. It's from these good questions. So you were, well, hold on, where was this? This was in the middle of another question. You essentially formulated the idea that as you're getting close to victory, doubt is trying to return to the original symptom. Bingo. You're totally right. That is what's happening here. And that's a good thing. Now, It's going to try to, remember, frustration is a form of doubt. It's going to try to rely on you getting frustrated and giving up. It thinks, if I just keep this up long enough, he's going to give up. As long as you keep this going, it's going to give up. Doubt always gives up. We just have to keep pushing on it. You're doing a great job. I want to just keep encouraging you that. And I want to tell you that the way I see this process going, you don't need to worry about the timing, because the emotions column stuff is not all that relevant, except for symptom upticks when you're processing something is a way to combat doubt. It shows you, wow, my emotions really do correlate with this. But to get it under control and to come down, keep going through that power column morning and keep asking those questions until it makes full sense and you can see, oh, you know what? I really am going to be better, and pretty soon. I do think because you're going through a power column symptom struggle, it could be a little while, but the great news is this. When you process a power column symptom, you get to a better place for good. Emotions and doubt column work is a more ongoing thing. Power column work is something that you tend to process and get through, and by achieving that morning, you won't ever have to do this again. Scott, let me know if that makes sense. As usual, a long-winded response, but that's because there's so many elements to it. Okay, Dorisa says, hi, Dan and everyone. Good to see you, Dorisa. Thanks for joining us here. Let me just see what I'm missing here. Okay. Lynn Slavensky, good to see you. She says, thank you so much for helping me use the doubt column for my clogged ear. Much better. In group, I would like to do a similar thing for my doubts, fears about sitting while sitting. Thoughts? Okay, I'm going to say that in a second, but Lynn, I am going to share a little bit of what went on in the group with your permission. I'm assuming I have your permission from what you said here. Please object now if not. But Lynn is in the group, and she said she was having a new symptom. So we started to explore it. And what we said essentially was, this relates to what Scott said, by the way, her symptoms had started to shift. Scott's symptoms, he's saying, are shifting back to the original, just for now. And we'll break that as well. But for Lynn, she had symptoms of, let me just check and make sure it's okay. Okay. She had symptoms of her arms burning, and that was starting to go away, and boom, clogged ear. So I said to her, hey, what are the chances of that? And she knew. So we were observing a doubt. But as we talked about it, and as I started to push on the doubt, that clogged ear went away as we sat there. It was, one of those incredible moments that was really helpful. And by the way, this is a little plug for the groups. That's something that can happen in groups that usually can't happen here so well. I mean, you could report it to me that it's happening, but the group can't see it happening. And the person can't experience it happening right there with me. It's more powerful when we have more give and take that we can give. So I did want to just say, if you're struggling, and especially if you're coming in the middle here, if you're struggling and you want to know more about what I do, you can go to my website, www.crushingdoubt.org. I have teaching seminars that are pre-recorded. They'll tell you everything you need to know about the mind-body process and how to understand the different things that people see in the mind-body field. But in the groups, you get to come, it's once, twice, or 3 times a week. You can come actually talk to me on a Zoom call. It's a great group, fantastic group of people. And we talk even further. We can get even further in those groups because there's all that give and take that can happen. So now to Lynn's question, you wanted to do the same thing with sitting in group. I think that's a good idea, because one of the things in group that we can hear as well is we can, what's actually happening in your mind at different moments. So you make a particular thought and I say, wait, well, here's what I think. And there's a lot of bouncing back and forth. We can get there, Lynn. So my thought on that is great. I think we're doing such good work bringing doubt down. We've gotten you to a place where you understand your emotions well. I think we've worked on power. In the groups, we work on all the columns. But this is a doubt column thing that you want to work on, and I say, let's do it. Sounds great. All right. A couple of questions coming in from Instagram. Let me just make sure I'm missing anyone. By the way, if I ever do miss someone, please call it to my attention. I never want to miss somebody, and there's a particular reason for that. Of course, I don't want to miss anyone, but it also it's really important that everyone, if you have a question and I'm not responding, you're not going to feel seen. So make sure, I promise you it was never on purpose. So if I miss you, please do let me know. Okay, Catherine Toomer, good to see you here. Catherine, Dan, I am, let's see, I think there was a typo there. Let me see if I can piece together what you were saying. I am blank, really the only chronic pain left in me. Oh, I'm not sure what you're saying at the beginning, but you're saying the only chronic pain, in quotes, left in you is the symptom of OCD-like hypervigilance. So let me just say this one thing. With doubt column symptoms, Catherine put chronic pain in quotes, I think of it as consistently acute, meaning we are moment-to-moment beings. It can be changed at any given moment. Now, what she's saying is gotten past anything chronic, except for this idea that she has a kind of OCD-like hypervigilance. She says it's very painful, in quotes. I told you about the early morning panicky problem gazing. One of your suggestions was to ask myself why there is a dip in my power in the early morning, and that maybe there is, quote, condemnation of power going on. I'm thinking there is. As soon as I see that I have a wide variety of choices in front of me, which should mean power, I feel like I will make a choice and then doubt that choice and feel guilty that I possibly made a choice more out of fear than what I deeply desire. So that crushes any pleasure in power and throws me into despair. I am better than this sometimes, but this is still a pattern. So, condemnation of power. Okay, I'm going to answer that in a second, Catherine, but I got to say hi to a couple of people that I'm behind on, okay? Adam in Sussex, good to see you here. Kathy McGee Doherty, good to see you as well. Becky Louise Gornall, thanks for joining us here. Laura Court, good to see you as well. Okay, just making sure to say hi to people as they come through. So, Catherine, first of all, you did an excellent job observing this and thinking about it. And that's really all we can ask. This process of getting better from mind-body experience is really about thinking. It's about asking questions and thinking about these answers. And as you thought about it, you know, this idea of condemnation of power, just the very idea of it with me handing it to you, you got to think about it. And I think that's absolutely true. What I'm hearing is, and this is really interesting from a power column perspective, when you can't be certain in your decisions, you're not feeling powerful. When you feel powerful, you're going to feel I'm on my journey. I know what I need. I know what I need to do. That doesn't mean that all moments are good, but it does tend to mean clarity. So what I'm hearing is there's a bit of a lack of, well, more than a bit sometimes, of a lack of clarity about what to do. And that leaves you doubting all your decisions. What I want you to do instead is refocus that and think, what would this decision mean in my grand scheme of things? As an example, I'm making this up, Catherine. In the group, we'd be able to get a very specific thing together because I would ask you, but let me just make this up and we can go from here. Let's say you're deciding, am I going to spend time with my grandson or am I going to take some time to myself today? Well, that's actually a really complicated question. And there can actually be ways in which you could go wrong, in a sense. Wrong is not the right word, but go astray of where your alignment with yourself would be. Sometimes it's going to be, you know what? I have limited time on earth. I need to spend the time with this precious child. And other times it could be, I need to take care of me or I'm not going to be able to function well. And it could even be a combination. So what you need to do is to think about your overall needs. What do you need? And start thinking about which do I need most right now and why? To me, what you're really asking, Catherine, is how do I get clarification on these things so I can be certain? And I think the way to do that is to lay out very clearly what the issues are. So I think part of what's going on is, I'm trying to think if I would call that a condemnation of power. I think there is that. I think you're afraid of that, but that's really just preventing you from looking at it. You can sweep that aside and just look at it and say, you know what? I'm going to think about this. Essentially, what's going on there is not so much condemnation of power, but doubt. Doubt has crept in at that moment, and it makes you think, I don't know if you can even do this. So in a way, it's like a step before condemnation of power can even come in. I do think that's there, but I think this is more a doubt column issue right there. So recognize the doubt, attack it, open it up, and start to wonder about the power column again without the doubt being so in your face. Let me know if that makes sense to you. Okay. Then Scotty says, that makes a lot of sense. What I was saying to him, it's definitely doubt if it has been going on persistently. So that was about insomnia for those of you who caught that part. All right. Catherine Toomer then had to follow up. Also, I wonder if part of the problem is my extreme desire for this hypervigilance to go away is what perpetuates it, partly. Like maybe just being with the psychic pain, observing it will help it finally in its own good time leave. Thoughts? Thanks, Dr. Dan. Great observation, Catherine. And actually, that's power column right there. What you're describing, essentially, this would be a power column solution. If you said to yourself, you know what? Instead of thinking about this hypervigilance and OCD stuff as a problem, I want to think about this as a result of an earlier problem, something that happened to me, not something that I do to me, something that happened to myself. So I want you to think about the fact that you came to be hypervigilant. You came to be OCD because of those things that happened to you when you were a kid. And if you think about that, you're back on your power column journey and you're back to your core narrative, and that will guide you. And then you won't be desperate to get rid of it. You'll be sitting with it, exactly like you're saying. And that's very similar to what I was saying to Scott before on YouTube. Okay. Scott then said, this must have been a continuation of before. He was saying that he was having extreme fatigue with some head sensations. And then he said, kind of like someone put a 20-foot flaming moat in front of the finish line for me about getting close. That's 100% what doubt is doing. You know, at base, we're all a little bit afraid to become powerful. Symptoms go up when you're about to become powerful. I'm getting close to finishing this book. I've had more symptoms during this time, but because I know it, I don't let doubt get to me too much. And I look at that 20-foot flaming moat and think, either I'll jump over it or it's just going to shrink naturally. I just need to work at it. So, Scott, let me make sure you didn't say anything beyond that. Oh, no, you did. Let's see. Maybe I meant regarding timing, how long it's taking to get over this last range of symptoms. Okay. So, Scott, let me ask you this. Again, in group, we'd have this give and take. It would be very quick. We'd get a lot of information. But tell me here, if my answer about the power column and the fact that it does tend to take a couple weeks or sometimes even a couple months to really process it and get past that last range of symptoms, does that make sense to you? And does that put you enough at ease? It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think. But let's find out what you think. Okay. Jane Smith, good to see you here. Jane says, hi, Dr. Dan. Thanks for being here and for having room for me and my process. It is my pleasure. Sorry I can't be here today and we'll have to catch the replay later. Okay, well, I'm saying hi to you in the replay. You'll be with me now. But Jane, I wanted to say I appreciate your appreciation. You know, it goes a long way. People don't often realize just how important it is to have that feeling of appreciation, because I'm really, once I got better, I decided I was going to work like a dog for everybody else so that they have what they need. So that appreciation keeps me going, and I really appreciate that. But part of what Jane's also referring to, and I'm thankful for this, is she's noting that this columns process does make room for the individual. And that's so important. It's one of the reasons why a lot of mind-body work doesn't work for everybody. It works, parts of it work for this person, parts of it work for this person, parts of it work for this person at one time, but not at another. We need a process that's more individualized. But it also can't be so individualized that you need to meet one-on-one every time, because then it's impractical. People can't afford it. There's not enough access. There's not enough people to help. So the column system allows us the flexibility to fit ourselves into this, to get to a place where we can see our own system within my system and how it's going to work. And that individual experience of you gets to be there. So thanks for noting that, Jane. I appreciate it. Okay. Rita on Instagram says, and thank you for being here, Rita. Great mind-body coach. She says, Dan, can you give some examples of B questions? Okay. So as I said before, A questions are designed to get you more information. B questions are actually designed by fear. So I'm pulling this out of thin air, Rita, but this would be the kind of thing that somebody in a B question could voice. They could say, well, listen, I've heard a study that showed that this kind of symptom people generally don't get better from. Is that true? Now, does that sound like a... Because it isn't. It's not a real question. It is, it's a phrase in the form of a question, but it has an agenda. The agenda is, I've seen this article and you disprove it. So we're coming in where the burden of proof is in favor of the fear. That's a problem. Happened recently again, and Rita, this one will really speak to you. People with CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome, a huge portion of them can often come in with B questions. They come in and they say, well, I know about CRPS and this is what happens. So do you really think I can get better? And there's an edge to that question. You know, you could ask it a very different way. You could say, listen, I'm really scared. I've heard this diagnosis. It really scares me. I'm hopeful. And that openness is what makes the difference. So another way of thinking about this, Rita, is that if a question is asked defensively and it's asked out of fear, and it's not going to get you any information if I even answer it, because you're just trying to establish fear and I'm trying to take it down for you, the only thing we're possibly going to achieve there is to get rid of the fear. But we're not going to get new information. But if you're asking it truly openly, even if you're afraid, you just want to know, then it's an A question. Let me know if that makes sense. Those were two examples of it, Rita, but let me know if that kind of hit the spot of what you wanted to know about. Okay? Okay, Teresa says, how do you let go of worry of certain issues that keep recurring even when you know that the body heals? Okay, so Teresa, this is one that I wish I were talking to you about this in group, because this one we would have to, I have lots of questions about this that we can get further on. And I can tell you some examples of those. You know, as an example, I would say, what kind of issue are we saying? What are you saying to yourself about it? What's happening in your mind, even though you know the body heals? What I really want to do is I'd want to get to a place where, I'd want to get to a place where we're articulating whatever's going on for you. That's the key. Articulate whatever's going on for you. So when you say, how do you let go of the worry? First thing I want to do is say, well, what is it? Let's get it articulated. I don't know what it is, Teresa. And then this, I'll pull out a thin air again. This is an example. You could say, maybe you're thinking, well, this issue is just particularly tough. That's what I call level 2 doubt, where you think one symptom is harder to conquer than another. Or you could say, listen, I'm never going to get better because of this part of my personality, like Catherine Toomer was saying about hypervigilance. That was holding, that sometimes can hold her back because she thinks that about herself. So your question, I'm sorry about this, Teresa, but your question leads to questions that I need to ask you, and then we can go next about how to do it. I'll try to answer it though. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Teresa then said, I have issues with doctors because it ramps up the fear and then it places more fear. Okay. So here's the way I would deal with that one. But notice, Teresa articulated the specific doubt, and now we can get even further with it because we know what it is. So I would say this is the way I handle it, Teresa. I have a rule of thumb where anytime I go into any doctor's office at all, no matter how much I trust them, I put on what I call my doubt armor. I go in, I expect them to say a bunch of ridiculous stuff, to not know about mind-body stuff, to mix things up, to potentially say scary things. And I say to myself, I'll take their information, I'll run it through my own circuits as I consider the mind-body process. And I say, I'm going to shrink the circle of doubt. I did this when I was getting better. I decided there were only 2 people I was really going to trust at all, fully. And they were Dr. Sarno and me when I wasn't having doubt. If I was having doubt, I couldn't even trust me. I could only trust Dr. to that circle of trust. And the way I think about it with doctors is they're very helpful in life or death situations. They're very helpful in what I need to do to live a longer life. You know, if I need to get something checked out for my heart or things like that. I'll listen to them about that, but I'm always going to have in the back of my mind that I'm going to be fighting doubt, and I'm going to fight any doubts they give me. So that's the main thing I would do with that one. But backing up to the general, how do you let go of worry of certain issues? Get it articulated and counter it. That's exactly what we just did here. I hope it was helpful. Please do let me know. Okay. Dr. Gary 333, good to see you here. Thanks for joining us. Okay. We already covered that with Scott. Okay, Todd, good to see you here. Todd says, so here I sit in the power column trying to figure out what the message is, but I have no idea how to get this message, where to start. Okay, so Todd, the place to start, the power column has two main tasks to it. One is develop your core narrative, and the other is assess for power in each moment. That second one, I don't tend to get to until I've tried out the first. So what I want you to do is work on that core narrative. You said where to start. That's where I want you to start. The core narrative has 3 sentences to it. And the third one, you're not even going to worry about right now. I'll tell you why not. The first sentence is, what is your core suffering self? What defines that? How have you suffered? And how do you get to that? You take all of your emotions column themes, those 6 to 12 themes that you developed in the emotions column, and you say, what do these have in common? What are they describing? For me, I had lots of different things, but ultimately it came down to feeling valid and safe. I'd say those 2 things. So my core narrative was really about not feeling valid and not feeling safe, or even not feeling safe because I didn't feel valid. So we need to get to the core idea of how you have suffered and continue to suffer. The second sentence is, how did it affect you? Where you list out all the different ways in your life that it affected you. This is all designed to help you see that power column message. The third is what you're going to do about it. And you don't even need to worry about that at first. Focus on the first sentence especially. Then we'll get the second sentence in place. And the third sentence, generally speaking, people usually come to me about that. They ask, okay, well, what can I do about it? You're not going to know what to do about it until it's defined. So we are in a setup right now where we want to find, what is this message? And the core narrative is the thing that does it. Todd, let me know if that makes sense to you and if you need more to go on. Okay, Dorisa says, thanks for assisting. My pleasure, Dorisa. I do hope that was helpful. If it wasn't helpful enough, though, push, ask for more, okay? You can keep at it. You just need to ask whatever questions you need to ask, and you got to get them answered to your satisfaction. Okay, Cindy Attias, good to see you here, Cindy. She says, regarding things that have happened to you, how do we resolve not blaming the person who was doing their best? Oh, I love this question. I've loved lots of questions, but some I get particularly excited about. This is one that I get particularly excited about because I think so differently about this than other people. And what I have to say, I think, can be very helpful. I think our job is not actually to not blame the person. Our job is the opposite. Our job is to go ahead and blame them, but not to their face, not in ways that they necessarily have to deal with, although possibly. What's really usually happening, especially in the power column, is we're not letting ourselves go to a certain place, and we need to. So at least within yourself, Cindy, what I would want you to do is this. Instead of saying, oh, they did their best, I want to challenge that idea. I think people can do better. Sure, they did their best in certain regards, but everybody's got eyes, everybody's got ears, everybody's got a brain, and they were taking in what was happening, or could have, and they could have stopped certain things. So I want to help you let yourself dive into the other side of things where you actually do blame them at first. You're not going to stay there, but it's almost a way of detoxifying it. Go ahead and blame them and say, no, you could have done better, because that's being fiercely in your own corner. Okay. Now, we can also forgive them at the same time. But the problem I have with forgiveness is people want to rush there first. And I don't think that's the way it works. I don't think you can forgive somebody until you were mad about it. So the first job, I would say, is to be mad about it. Now, Cindy, let me know what you think, because as usual, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think. But that could be a different way of thinking about it. And whatever that means to you, or however that sits with you, That's what's going to matter in terms of going the next step. I may not have hit on what you needed to hear in this moment. I may have. I hope I did. But if I didn't, then I would just want you to follow up and say, okay, I hear you, but I've kind of got that. Like maybe you've been able to be mad at them for years and haven't been able to resolve it. Right? So if there's that different question, let's work on it. Again, this is one of the reasons the groups are so helpful, is we'd be able to get to that with the back and forth really quickly, and I'd be able to zero in on just what I need to answer. But hopefully I've given you something to think about there that's useful anyway. Okay, let me know. All right, Jane Smith says, hi again, Dr. Dan. I managed to get here. Okay, good to have you here with us live then. So good to see you and hear you in real time. You're acknowledging how big a deal doubt is has helped me enough that I've been working in the power column. Fantastic, Jane. And that's something I want to highlight for everybody. We can't generally work in the power column and get to effective places until doubt has come down. And that's what Jane's saying. Doubt has come down enough, and that has allowed her to do some work in the power column. Ultimately, all the work ends up flowing towards the power column. We bring down doubt. We understand how emotions work so we can control the acute symptoms. By bringing the doubt down, the more long-standing symptoms are under control. Nothing's chronic. And then everything that's left is power column. Glad to hear it. Very excited to hear you working in the power column. Okay, Cindy does have a follow-up, and I'm glad to see. She said the person was, let's see, it looks like bipolar and said inappropriate stuff 60 years ago and still does. They can't change, and I can't change them. Okay, so here's the thing, Cindy. This is my take, but again, doesn't matter what I think. I'm just giving you something to go on that you can think about. The way I think about it is this. Yeah, when someone's bipolar, maybe they can't change, and probably in some large measure they can't, but they might be able to do something. Maybe they're not doing their best. However, you don't even need to necessarily get mad at them. You could say, well, I'm mad at the people who raised this person that led to this way. Some of it depends on what you believe about bipolar. For some people, they believe it's just purely genetic and there's nothing they can do about it. I don't actually believe that. I do believe there are genetic components. There's risk factors, but generally speaking, trauma activates all kinds of things. And included in that, I would say, is bipolar processes. When there's a lot of trauma, somewhere along the line, I'm assuming in family, though it could be somebody else, but somewhere along the line, trauma activated symptoms. And somebody is to blame for that. Somebody started that trauma. So let's say somebody's bipolar and they've been through hell. And they're just, maybe you could say, you know what, they've done their best, but somebody's to blame for that. I know what their parents did. So yeah, okay, so I see. So Cindy then said, interesting, she believes she had a tough childhood. Makes sense. Somewhere along the line, someone is to blame. And the kind of thinking that we have where we can't blame anybody is actually locking us into symptoms. That's why power column symptoms are there. They're saying, no. I refuse to accept this abuse I'm taking just because of this. No, somebody is to blame. And it doesn't even have to be a particular person. You could blame society for certain things. One of the things I sometimes get on my soapbox about is that society has all of, especially American society, have all kinds of taboos around sex, some of which are appropriate, but then when it comes to aggression, they just unleash it everywhere. They have like Star Wars is rated 6 and up, but Luke gets his hand chopped off. That's not 6 and up. And so sometimes it can help to rage internally at all kinds of things. Society for being this way, people for being this way, that person for being that way. Let yourself go there first. Then we'll move towards resolution. But first, you got to let in all kinds of anger. That's a place to start. Guys, we do. Yes, Rita said, yes, great examples. They sound familiar. Yes, absolutely. That was about A questions and B questions. You guys are asking great A questions. Don't be ashamed, by the way, if B questions come up. We all can ask them sometimes, but the key is to recognize them and not take them seriously and move towards these A questions. Almost everything that was said tonight, in fact, I think everything that was said tonight was an A question. It was meant to get you motivation. So bravo. and let's keep up the good work. I will see you all same time next week, and we'll keep at it. Hope it was helpful, and looking forward to seeing you soon. All right, take care.